Coming up on the Delaware Way, we'll introduce you to the Democratic candidate for state treasurer and new concerns about the agricultural industry in Delaware. This is the Delaware Way. Welcome to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. We have an important midterm election coming up, and we took it as a mission to try to introduce you to all the candidates. With that in mind, I introduce you now to Colleen Davis, who is the Democratic candidate for treasurer, and unusually in a Democratic state, you are running against one of the few Republican incumbents, and we'll get to more of that in a second. Thank you for being here, first off. But since it's the first time we've had you on as a candidate, I know we've had you on before, but the first time as a candidate, I want to give you the opportunity just to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, my family actually came to Sussex County after the financial ruin of my parents' family business. They were victims of fraudulent activity, and we ended up auctioning off all of our possessions. We lost every friend except for one, and when we arrived in Sussex County, we were welcomed with open arms into a truly amazing community, which you know, we find that there's a common thread of that same community all across Delaware. And, you know, at that time I ended up graduating from Indian River High School. I went on to fund my own college education, went on to graduate school and returned to the Wilmington area with my husband. We have 3 kids, and I'm a physician assistant. My background's primarily in neurosurgery and emergency medicine. And it was actually at the very beginning of my career as a neurosurgical PA. I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and I had a very dear friend call me up and say, you know, my practice is failing, and I really need some help modifying our management style and just supporting our practice. And I came in and started consulting for him and helped to revitalize his practice. And from that point, I sort of had 2 careers going at the same time. It was a lot of hustle, a lot of work, and I've been consulting, doing financial consulting in the healthcare industry since that time.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the financial consulting, because we had Ken Simpler on, who is the state treasurer, and he's running against you as your Republican challenger. And when I asked him about you, he said, he wasn't unkind, but he goes, I'm not sure what her passion is for running. I don't know why she's running. And then he started talking about his background and the fact that you need more of a financial background, which led me to ask him, do you think she's not qualified to run? And he wouldn't say that, but he did say that he was a CFO. He spent his entire life in finance, and you really need somebody with more of a financial background than I believe he was saying than you have. What is your answer to him?
Well, I would say that it depends on the perspective that you take as far as how you deal with finances. So in the last 9 months, I have saved over $13 million in the healthcare industry. And what that means is that it's a very complex system that we're looking at. If you've ever opened a bill, when it comes to healthcare services that you've received, they tend to be kind of convoluted and a little challenging. But what we focus on is improving the overall quality of the care that people get, creating true transparency so that people understand exactly what they're going to be paying before they receive services, and again, trying to refine the way that we practice in order to put money back into patients' pockets and back into families' pockets. And I've been very passionate about that over the last several years.
Putting money back into people's pockets. He made the point of saying, and I'll get off, I'm going to talk a little bit more about politics in a second, but he went on to say this is a very serious job where you are transferring $10 billion around the state, and you need more of an executive financial position to do that. That I think was his main point, and that you have been in the healthcare industry most of your career. Is that fair to say?
Well, not entirely. Several years ago, I did VC funding for novel, innovative products, particularly on the biologics, pharmaceuticals, and medical device. But the first fund that I took control over, we had about $310,000, and I brought it to $4.1 million within the first year. So when we're talking about investing money, moving money around, paying our bills, things like that, I've absolutely had the experience for that. I do have the experience for that. The difference is that I have the heart of the individual. I am someone who has always been service-oriented, and so when you look at the performance of Citadel and some of the other companies that my opponent has been running, there have been lawsuits that have gone all the way to the Supreme Court level, and a lot of unhappy customers who lost over 50% of their investment and were not able to get their funds back from organizations such as Citadel. My focus is ensuring that when someone invests $1, we're going to properly manage that dollar.
So you're, and that was a bit of an attack at the end, so you're saying that the way he's run businesses or been involved in businesses in the past may profit the businesses, but they hurt individuals, and that, do you have any proof that he's done that in the state while he's been treasurer?
I wouldn't say that he has gone out of his way to intentionally harm people, but I think that it's a lack of true leadership. We've had 9 straight quarters where we haven't seen the transactions and the investment when it comes to the cash management investment fund. And again, that's something that is the role of the treasurer and should be on his website and clearly available to all taxpayers. And that's something that hasn't happened. When
you say that should be, I did read some of the statements you've made in the past, and you said that he hasn't been transparent, and I assume that's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm referring to.
So, and you're referring to that because you feel what? I mean, it should always be, you should always tell what the state's making when they make an investment? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, you should, but it's actually a statute, and so it's required. It's something that should have been done, and it hasn't been.
So is he breaking the law or just breaking a regulation?
It's breaking a regulation.
Okay. And aside from that, and I want to talk about Ken Simpler a little bit more, and then we'll talk about your vision, and we'll go into that. Is that your major complaint about the job he's done? Because for you to run and want to take his job, you have to be saying that he didn't do a good job, right?
Yeah, and I think ultimately it also comes down to truly, you know, the heart of the purpose of the individual that's in that office. So there's a reason that it's an elected position, and again, it's because we want to put someone in that position who aligns with our values.
It's interesting you keep talking about the heart of the individual, because it sounds like sort of a backhanded slap at him, that he doesn't have a big heart, or that there's something wrong with his heart.
That's not what I mean. No, that's not what I mean. I just mean that when we're looking at overall values and we look at, you know, I'll just stop there. When we look at the values of the person who's walking into that position, we want to be sure that those values align with ours, and that we can trust that person to steward our finances well, and to steward them in a way that speaks to the taxpayers, and stewarding those taxpayer dollars in a way that aligns with our values.
And I think I've spent enough time in the he said, she said part of the interview. We're going to come back with another segment, and we'll talk about your vision for the office when we continue our conversation with Colleen Davis, candidate for treasurer in Delaware.